50 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams. We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints as they prepare for the draft. We'll talk about the end of the Pelicans season. We'll get into some LSU baseball. Also talk about the LSU championship in women's basketball. We'll touch on LSU football and Tulane football. And of course, as we always do, we'll give you again a look at where all the local teams are when it comes to the baseball standings. All that coming up. And one of the best we have, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports joined us on the program today. Sean, how are you, bud?
Doing great. Just kind of accepting the reality. There's no more NBA already.
How did you feel at the end of the game?
I utterly disappointed,
right?
Frustrated. It kind of encapsulated the entire season in that this last 48 to 72 hours
right.
with the Pelicans. We talk about the Sunday loss, the Zion update / non-update, David Griffin, then Zion, then the game. Disappointment. I expected more out of this team. I think this market expected more out of this team. That this fan base was right to expect more out of this team, and they fell short. We have to basically kind of challenge them when it comes to this perpetual state of mediocrity that they seem to be in.
I agree.
Celebrating small victories, celebrating certain accomplishments. But this year, I felt like the corner turned to where, 42-40 in a play-in exit is not okay.
No.
And they need to be held accountable for that. And we'll see what happens. But I felt it's a disappointing season. And to think how far they fell from that #1 seed, whenever that was a few months back, to a quiet exit, a quiet and quick exit to an inexperienced Oklahoma City Thunder team in the play-in at home. Let's not sugarcoat it. It was a disappointing season. I don't want to call it a failure, but they did not live up to expectations.
I agree. I was disappointed, but I got to tell you what, almost was glad to see it over with.
Yeah,
especially after what happened.
I understand that.
Right, especially after what happened with Zion 2 days ago. And the controversy there. And I almost get the feeling, and I'm not trying to read into what happens with the team, but I almost got the feeling that maybe the team was kind of like, exhaling, let's get this over with, let's reset for next year. I'm not saying they lost on purpose. No, I don't.
No.
But I'm saying that I think there's a little bit of a sigh of relief there too. Okay, they didn't want to have to deal with this. Zion, when are you coming back every single day? Why are you out of shape? Well, what did you mean by, again, I'm not coming back to feel like Zion, all that stuff. They don't have to deal with all that. And I really think that was really the kind of the downer right there when he came out and made those comments the other day. We're going to get into those comments in a minute, but let's talk about the season, because the last year at this time, this city was on fire. Okay,
feeling great.
I mean, you really felt good about the future of the team going into the season. Okay, the first part of the season, you felt really good about this team. They came out. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Brooklyn, right? I mean, they go in again. They go on this little winning streak. Then again, you get to the situation where Brandon Ingram goes out, but then Zion takes over, and again, he's playing at an MVP level. I mean, he got voted into the All-Star game by the players based on 29 games that he played. I mean, that's almost unheard of, to be a first teamer on the West off 29 games. And then, of course, the situation with Brandon Ingram, again, being 100%, but not willing to come back until he felt like, again, he was ready to come back. And then pretty much the same type situation we heard from Zion 2 days ago with, again, him not being 100%. Although, again, I think now that we're seeing a little bit different situation with him, again, in terms of why he's not coming back. And a lot of that has to do with his weight and being out of condition, which, again, we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the season was a yo-yo season the entire season. Right when you thought they were getting ready to turn a corner, they fell back again, and you didn't see the growth that maybe I thought we'd see from some of the young players.
It was a sporadic season. It was a yo-yo season. It ultimately ended up being a tease of a season because you really felt like this team had really turned the corner, and they weren't just going, because I had said it earlier in the year. Juan Kincaid asked me, should we temper expectations? I said, we've had 2 decades of tempered expectations in this city when it comes to NBA basketball. My goodness, are we ever going to hold everyone to the same expectation that we would any other program that we cover and follow very closely in this market and in this state? And you saw the development, then you saw the injuries. And you saw kind of a sporadic development with some of the second-year guys, and then the wheels came off once those second-tier type guys had to really play longer. Right. And then the 10-game losing streak at one point, you closed it out pretty nicely, 9 out of 12. But that last game against Minnesota, man, it put everything in a bad vibe at that point because they won that game. I don't know. It just felt like they've been an 8 seed. They would have guaranteed 2 games. Maybe you would have felt a little bit better. But I think overall the season was a tease, and ultimately it ended up back right around where they were, actually worse than where they were last year because they didn't even advance to the playoffs this year. They were a quick exit out of the play-in. So I think overall when you look at this season, it just became a tease. Right. You got little tastes here and there, how good they could be, but if you keep playing the how we could be card, you run out of time because you're now on 3 out of 4 years of could be when it comes to Zion Williamson, because that's what it boils down to. This team was not going to do anything without Zion Williamson. Had they had Zion Williamson for a full year, who knows? Maybe they were 1 or 2 seed, who knows? But that's not reality, and that hasn't been the reality.
You have to
accept the reality, and the organization now has to shift to that reality.
Agreed. 100%.
Not the reality of, well, we're going to make sure, basically coddling him until he's ready to come back. Right. No, it has to go away.
Right.
But as for the on the court, look, I thought Brandon Ingram I thought he played great towards the end of the season. I understand early in the season, or middle of the season, whatever it was, with the injury and he'd been 100%, and then kind of got called out, but not directly called out in a post-game interview earlier in the season, and all of a sudden he came back. So, you like some things, you don't like others. I just think right now, with the way the roster is currently structured, you've probably reached the ceiling. Now you got to make some significant changes going forward, and really just kind of reestablishing who you want to be, and then really resetting the expectation and/or demands of your franchise.
Zion played 29 games. B.I. played 45 games. Put a lot of pressure on the young players, but I want to look at that Oklahoma City team last night, who again are ahead of schedule, and the growth that we've seen from their young players over the last 2 years, and put in a more prominent position as the young players here have: Herb, Murphy, Alvarado, Najee. And what we saw in a lot of cases was film being the great equalizer and teams taking away their strengths in a lot of cases, where again you see other teams with younger players that continue to be able to grow. I think that we expected more growth out of, again, those young players after last year's breakout season as rookies, and they did not take that next step consistently.
I would agree. I felt like there was a stretch with Trey Murphy where he kind of felt like he was on fire from shooting the basketball, but he was inconsistent. Herb had an interesting year. He's still a great defender, but I think we could all agree it was much more inconsistent this year than it was a season ago. Alvarado, he got hurt towards the end, and I think Alvarado's presence may have made a difference down the stretch, especially in a game like last night. Energy, spark, home crowd. I think that would have made a difference. And you look at OKC, I mean, that team played loose last night. They played loose. They played like a young team growing together. And they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in years to come. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't their number 1 overall pick get injured? And he didn't see the court at all this year.
Yeah, Holmgren.
So, So you're talking about an organization and/or franchise that that's basically going the organic route, going through the young players, and look where they're at.
Which
right
they've done several times.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, they've done this several times.
They have.
Presley has 15 #1 picks over the next 4 years. Okay, you can't use them all.
Right.
But still, much like the Pels, they have more than the Pels. I think the Pels have. I don't want to speculate. The 12 or so that are left of all the picks that they have. What I think also we learned is that the makeup of this team is not working.
That's probably a good way to put it.
Okay,
right.
Because they don't have the outside shooting that you need to be able to compete in the NBA right now. And I think that's been the biggest Achilles heel. Maybe you mask that with having Zion on the court, okay? But for the most part, when you had to get a three-point bucket, you couldn't get it. When teams went zone on you, you couldn't shoot them out of the zone. Again, and you didn't have any more. Even your most consistent three-point shooter in Murphy was inconsistent.
Exactly. And we said at the trade deadline, what could you look for? I know a lot of people said size. I said a shooter because you can always use a shooter, especially in today's NBA, especially in the postseason, where theoretically you don't get quite the calls you would get when you drive the lane, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I would agree. The makeup of this team, as currently constructed, is not going to get you anywhere. And we'll see. The hypothetical with Zion, to me, you just throw it out the window. You're going to need a shooter at some point. Maybe it helps whoever that shooter would be with a presence like Zion. I don't know.
The spacing is going to help.
That would certainly help. But I think you need to have a guy that the first thing on their scouting report says three-point shooter. There's plenty of those in the NBA right now. And they're coming out every single year in the draft.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about Zion because I want to get to what seems to be the entitlement fraternity of NBA superstars and stars of, again, these load management days, not coming back to your 100% healthy. And then I want to talk specifically about Zion. First of all, I think a lot of people are disappointed in what he said. I'll be back when I feel like Zion. And I think I reacted like a lot of people did emotionally after that because we're a working class town. And when you're trying to tell people, again, who are trying to working paycheck to paycheck, that put up their good money to be able to go see the Pelicans play, and you got a guy that's made $44 million and about to make $193 million, and he's saying, I'm gonna play when I feel like Zion, that people could take exception to that, as I did. But I think that as we look at this now, that first of all, he's been coddled too much. Number one. Number two, he doesn't know how to articulate his position. And what he should have said is, guys, I have not practiced for 4 months. I am grossly out of shape, and I can't get on the basketball floor and compete in a playoff type setting right now based on how that ramps up in the condition I'm in. Now, first of all, shame on him for not staying in shape while he was hurt.
This is every time he gets hurt.
Right. Shame on him.
Yes.
Shame on him. He's got a personal chef. That he has a weight room. He's got everything, a pool. You got everything you need to be able to stay in shape there because your team's going to need you down the stretch. To blow up to where he is right now, which is probably 300 pounds, is unacceptable. And that has to be addressed by the Pelicans management. I know they did it in the contract, but it has to be addressed.
Well, it has to be enforced.
And I want to get your take on that because I want to get back to C.J. McCollum pretty much said that last night in code, okay, on how he felt about giving advice to the young players, but them not taking the advice.
All right, so where would you like to start?
You start where you like.
All right, Zion Williamson. Okay, the situation. Let's start with the Q&A. I know there's a little bit of Zion does his own thing, Zion has his own crew, Zion has his own this, his own that.
Right.
Does he have his own PR staff? Because the messaging was so out of alignment. When I heard he was talking, I was following along on Twitter, and I'm kind of catching up with the tweets, and then I got the video back at the station, and I tried to watch as much as I could. I said, wait a second. I thought he would come over and say, I am chomping at the bit. I want to get back so badly. I want to help my guys. I want to get on the court. I'm just not quite there yet. I'm this close. I'm this close. I want to hit the metrics. Or, look, I want to come back. They're telling me I can't. I'll tell you one of those two.
Right.
I'm not ready because I don't feel well enough. I'm good physically, but I don't feel like Zion. When he used the phrase, I can sit on the bench and help my teammates or whatever the case may be, we were like, I could believe it. I could not believe those words came out of his mouth. So what you're dealing with is a guy that I think the organization has been afraid to essentially counsel or afraid to essentially interject their expectations on him, and does his own thing. And then you're dealing with a young kid that's probably immature right now, that doesn't understand optics, that doesn't understand messaging, and doesn't understand that that doesn't look good to say that. And then go and do a warm-up session. I don't know how long, how many hours it was before the game. That could have been done at the team facility on Airline Drive with no one watching. You did that because you wanted people to see.
Right.
I'm so confused. What do you want us to see? That you're overweight? You're doing windmill dunks or whatever at the end? I mean, this guy leads the nation, leads the world in highlight dunks in pregame warm-ups. I mean, but it never translates to the court, at least when he's not healthy. So I just think, if you're the Pelicans, and you said something earlier, this has been hovering over them.
Yes.
Okay? His health, lack of health, hovering over them. They've done their best to stay in their lane, compartmentalized, but it hangs over. It's a little bit like the Sean Payton thing last year with the Saints. It's there.
Right.
If you're the Pelicans, you have to turn the page and flip the script and say, you're our max player, you're a member of this organization, you're not doing your own thing anymore. You have been gone for 3 out of the last 4 years. You have to get back on the court, and we're going to do things our way now, because we've done this other way.
Right.
It hasn't worked. So we're going to do things our way. We're going to hold you accountable. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And frankly, before you go on a media session, we're going to talk to our PR people and make sure we're all on
then we got the same message,
what we're saying. Because what David Griffin said versus what
completely
Zion Williamson said, the messaging was totally muddled. And you walk back saying, there is no. This team, it's so confusing.
Right.
How can you even make heads or tails of this, because it's so confusing at this point?
Sean, you're so right. When I heard ESPN say last night during the broadcast that he had not been medically cleared, okay, when 24 hours earlier he's telling everybody he's medically cleared,
right?
Okay, and this is more of a Brandon Ingram type thing of, I'm not taking the court till I'm 100%.
Right.
Okay, which is something that is really wrong with professional basketball right now, and we'll get into it. But I want to continue this conversation about Zion. If he's going to continue to be the centerpiece of this team, and I'm sure, again, when you make the investment you make in him, you're still expecting that, the kid gloves have to come off.
Now it's over. They
have to come off. Okay? He's got to be treated like a professional. And there's another thing that I really think that this team desperately needs. Number one, they got to toughen up. They need some dogs with rings, okay? They need some guys that are physical, that take nothing, no guff from no one, within the locker room or on the court, and that have championship pedigree.
A rugged veteran, get him in that locker room.
In that locker room, okay? I know CJ is the president of the Players Association, and he's trying to, again, enlighten these kids with his wisdom. That only goes so far, and he pretty much showed his frustration last night in the press conference on, again, what he's tried to do, what he's tried to instill in some of these young kids, and they're not getting it. So you need to go in another direction. You need somebody that can shake this locker room up, okay? Somebody that we've seen at times, maybe have to get a little physical with their guys, okay? Okay, somebody they'll fear. What Draymond Green said about this team when they imploded against Golden State has stuck with me. Again, and he was talking to the bench. Y'all are not cut like this, okay? In other words, y'all not cut to be physical, okay? On the court. Y'all are a soft team,
basically,
and they need to change that.
You got to approach the DNA like that. You got to find some guys that are attainable, that you can go and bring in this locker room that can do that sort of thing and have that sort of DNA that can get you a little more rugged, get you a little more built for regular season, postseason. But make sure in the locker room everyone's being held accountable.
Right.
Accountable. And it's
the same.
But with the Zion thing, it's almost forcing the franchise to talk out of two sides of their mouth, because they want that.
Right.
But they know this is a special case over here.
Right.
That has to go. They're not aligned.
Right.
That has to get aligned.
Right.
And then maybe the consistency of message will come, and then maybe you'll start to see some growth out of this franchise. Look, I don't think they're moving on from Zion.
I don't think so either. I'm not listening to what the national people saying.
What could you get for him?
Nothing.
And I think for the first 3 years of his career, they were terrified over there that he would want to leave this market. And that's neither here nor there now. Like you haven't.
You got him.
You have him, but you haven't had him.
Right.
So when you watch a game like last night, you know he's going to make a difference.
Right.
When you watch the season, you know he's going to make a difference.
Of course he is.
So it just leaves you with this wanting more but never quite getting it.
But he's got to mature.
He does.
On and off the court. Okay? He's got to understand his body, okay? Look, I'm a big guy, okay? He's a big guy. He's got to know that if I'm knocking down pizzas and candy bars at 1 in the morning, I'm picking up weight. There was no excuse. When you have the facilities the Pelicans have, weight room, pool, everything you need, your own personal chef, there's no way that you should gain the type of weight that he gains every time he gets hurt.
Every single time.
And I'll say this again. There has to be an insistence for this organization.
That's it, yeah.
That in the offseason, you are here. You're not in North Carolina. You're not hanging out at Duke. You're not hanging out again with your buddies on the AAU circuit. Or you're not going to hang out in Los Angeles, wherever you're going. You're in New Orleans. You're working out, and you're preparing yourself for the next season to come up. Because, again, we've had these issues with injury, and we've had these injuries with
You've burned up all your favor. Like, you've burned it up. Now it is grow-up time. It's grown-up time.
There's no doubt.
It's grown-up time.
You're getting a grown-up contract.
Like, it's it. This is what you have to do. There is no more. Because, like I said, I think they were worried about the small market thing and him wanting to stay. I think that probably hovered over the organization for a long period of time and infected the mindset. But now, like, if he wanted to leave, so be it. I mean, he's not available. No. He's never available.
Right.
So it all has to change.
I also think that you need to prepare accordingly. You have two players that are often injured, in Ingram and Zion. And I think that
factor that in.
You got to.
Yeah.
You have to say that they're going to miss 40 games apiece.
Go into it with that
So
mindset.
you got to look and say, okay, what are we going to do to upgrade this team in the offseason with another star, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I know you don't want to pay the luxury tax, but you may have to move off of some of the players on your roster now to bring in that star, okay, so that when one or two of these guys go out, that you're not left with C.J. McCollum trying to be able to carry the team with Valanciunas. You've got to get another star, preferably someone that is a big that can score from the outside. That would be the best of both worlds. Look, I love Jaren Jackson Jr. Again, his dad is a New Orleans native. He's with Memphis. It may be hard to get him, but he seems to be the perfect fit for what they need. But there are other players out there they can get. They need veterans that ultimately, again, can come in and augment this team when those two guys go out.
Yeah, and that's why this offseason is going to be interesting because the roster's not going to look the same. You know, you mentioned C.J. McCollum a couple of times. I know he was injured, but I was actually disappointed.
Right.
And not just this playoff series, a play-in series, but, you know, I didn't think he played that well last year in the playoff series. And if I recall, when the Pelicans played the Blazers a few years back, him kind of disappearing in that series as well. So I think that's something that has followed him. But he is a warrior. He did gut it out.
Right. He had a torn labrum and the thumb injury.
Torn labrum.
Yeah, Will Gilly just reported that today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So for him to be even on the court right now.
And especially watching, you know, some other, and he's trying to do what he needs to do to show leadership. And I just think he could be the one of the ones gone.
Right.
I don't know.
Him or Valanciunas.
Yeah.
And again, you hate to see Valanciunas as a double-double guy who's a matchup problem, who can shoot the three-point line go, but both those guys are making big money. And if you're going to have to go to another star, you may have to give one or two of those guys up. You lead me to the entitlement fraternity of NBA stars and superstars with this load management that have reached their max contracts, who again are refusing to either play during some games or, as we've seen with Brandon Ingram and somewhat with Zion Williamson, not willing to get on the floor until they're 100%. It's bad for the game. It's bad for the game all the way around. Load management is bad for the game. And of course, with players, when you see guys gunning it out like C.J. McCollum, who's playing with a torn labrum and a pretty much, again, a broken thumb for the okay? And then you see other players are not willing to put it on the line. There's something wrong with that, especially when the two guys that are not putting it on the line are your max players.
Yeah, I mean, it all fits in. This is really a new phenomenon. This is
right.
Within the last 2 to 3 years.
Right.
This has become. I mean, when did this ever start? I mean, I just think back to the Magic and Bird days and then Michael Jordan. This has never happened. Even past the Jordan prime.
Right.
I mean, that late '90s run.
Right. Could you say Kobe?
Kobe and to Shaq, like that.
Right.
That just you are paid very, very well to play a sport that you would be playing. You know that you've been playing since you were a kid. Play.
Right.
Play the game that you love to play and that you want to play and that you are obviously gifted enough to play at this level to earn this kind of funds. So to me, that mentality has to go. I don't know if the league can step in and maybe force certain things.
I think the league has to step in.
They're going to have to.
They're talking about going to an in-season tournament now. Okay? Look, I think they have to step in. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Load management is bad for the game. You can't have superstars sitting out of road games where people are paying tickets to see these stars and then they don't show up.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do it anymore. It just cannot happen. To me, the number one subject in the offseason outside of again reworking this roster, because I think they got to figure out again who is untouchable and who is not. Okay, and this goes for the Saints and Pelicans. And we talked about this on the radio show before. I've been pounding this for months. There has to be a hard look at, again, what's happening with the training staff, what's happening, again, with the personal trainers for these players, and so that they're aligned, and also, again, to be able to try to figure out what's going on with these soft tissue injuries. Stan Van Gundy said on the Pelicans broadcast that he felt like load management and the lack of practice for NBA teams had got them into the situation where they're having these injuries because their bodies are not ready for an 82-game season. Okay? Yeah. On the Saints side, we've seen this, man. You see whole position groups going down. Okay? Soft tissue. I'm not talking about collision injuries.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm talking soft tissue injuries that they're not able to come back from. With everything they have at this Pelican facility, they have to look not just nationwide, worldwide, to figure out what's going on with what they're doing as opposed to what other teams around the world are doing to keep their players healthy.
Yeah, NFL-wise, I remember tweeting out an injury report once, and another beat reporter retweeted me, said, I want to show this because every team feels like they're constantly banged up. Sometimes I think that perception can cloud that your team that you cover, that you follow, is more injured than others. NFL-wise, I tend to think that evens out, although I know the Saints made significant changes over the years to that training staff because they're especially like in that 08-ish area that time.
Well, they would have misdiagnosis.
They were having crazy things with misdiagnosis and which affected recovery.
Right. Same thing with Pelicans.
Which costs Pelicans the same thing. No, Pelicans, I don't know what you can do. I don't know if there's a way you can, if there's a ramp-up period, or if they're overthinking this and simply about Stan Van Gundy, what he said, which was, you just get these guys' bodies ready and just demand them to play more.
Well, they practice more. And
if I'm not mistaken, Zion, the longest stretch he had in a season was 61 games. Wasn't that with Stan Van Gundy?
Right.
So, and he's a little more demanding when it comes to physicality. So. Maybe that's the secret. I don't know, Eric. Right. That dips into, okay, how much do you account for just the nature of the game? How much do you account for where we're at just from a sports science, sports medicine standpoint? And is there something they can do on this? Because that's the controllable that could help. I don't know. I can recall when they brought in this trainer from Phoenix that he was supposed to be the most superb trainer there is.
Maybe he worked with older. His reputation was with Grant Hill and Shaq and older players. You see, I think he's overcautious. To me, I think that
might be the case.
Okay,
that might be the case.
They are now so worried about putting a player on the court that's injured instead of in the past where we've seen players play through injury. And then the other part of it is transparency. You see, I think that, like when you're talking about C.J. McCollum, right? C.J. McCollum's out there gutting it out with a torn labrum and pretty much a broken thumb, right? But yet the organization is not being transparent about what the injuries are. Look, the other teams know what the injuries are, the agents know what the injuries are, and the players know what the injuries are.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if you're not honest with the media and the fan base, then we start pontificating on what we see, but not really knowing what's going on behind the scenes. Saints have the same problem. If you're not going to be transparent with the injuries that are out there, then again, don't get angry when people in the media or the fan base using their social media platforms are coming after your organization or the player when the player's trying to gut it out because the player's playing at 40% instead of 100%.
Yeah, that's a funny thing when it comes to injury transparency because I think any organization owes their fan base, clarity of why the star player is not playing at that time, or any player for that matter is not playing at that time. I just think they owe that. Now, I don't think you need to go into the nitty-gritty, the specifics. But I think you need to be honest and clear with what you can show. You know, Dennis Allen did a little bit better job with that. I mean, with Sean Payton, it was just, I mean, you ain't getting nothing. But Dennis Allen at least told you what the injury was and what the player was dealing with. In the Pelicans case, they seem to send out these alerts, and you get these, updates, and it's usually like a 2-paragraph.
Didn't you feel you were getting strung along with Zion?
In most cases, all right, you would believe the timeline. But in Zion's case, I'd look at it, all right, 6 weeks in January, all right, he's not coming back till March. Or, reassess in 2 to 3 weeks. I said 2 to 3 weeks to reassess, he's not coming back till April. Right. And sure enough, it was what, April?
I felt like I was getting strung along the whole time.
The whole time. And all that leads to believe is it gets you guessing, and then it leads to frustration within the fan base because they want to see, obviously, their star player on the court, or if he's not on the court, just say why.
Right.
Just say why.
The transparency should be league-wide. Look, both the NBA and the NFL have chosen to partner with again, sports gambling. And if you're, again, as a sports gambler, you want to be able to have the most information you can have to be able to make an educated wager. And if you're going to get in bed with these gambling houses, well, then you need to be transparent with not just the fan base, but the gambling public. And that's part of the problem as well. And then again, we get to the point where, again, like I'm with you. You and I discussed this the other day before, off the air about C.J. McCollum, and I'm right there with you. Yeah, dude looks like he's getting old.
Right.
But nobody knew he had a torn labrum.
Yeah, torn labrum changes everything.
I mean, come on. Nobody knew he had a torn labrum.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that. We've seen him gut it out. We're saying, man, C.J. McCollum's just gutted it out, man. Yeah. Give him a tremendous amount of credit. Again, he's leading by example. These guys are not following him. When Brandon Ingram's out with a bruised toe for 2 months, okay, and this guy's playing with a torn labrum. When Zion's out for 4 months with a strained hamstring, not torn, okay, and then now he's too overweight to play. That's an issue.
And then in Zion's case, this idea of re-injury seems to pop up a lot. I mean, so he gets injured, gets out of shape, re-injury, out of shape more, got to get back in shape with the hope of not re-injury. He is one of the most, and I don't mean this in a positive way, just is what it is, unique athletes in that he's built a certain way, he plays a certain way with that kind of force, but when he gets injured, it just throws him off, and to the point where it just completely knocks him out, and he cannot recover.
Right. Sean, he's missed 60% of his games. He misses 6 of every 10 games since he's been drafted. I mean,
yeah.
that's mind-blowing.
That's why the page turns now.
Absolutely.
We are redoing everything. You are one of us now. You are not getting special treatment. You want the special treatment back? Get on the court for, just give me 70% of the games. 70% of the games. Heck, at this point, give me half the season.
Right.
50%. And then be the dominant force that we know you can be. Then we go back to that. But right now, the page has got to turn.
And I still think, again, David Griffin has to plan accordingly, that he's going to have Brandon Ingram and Zion out for at least 40 games a year.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's lagniappe.
Yeah, and at this point, it would be organizational misconduct to not assume that. Because, I mean, they've given you enough of a sample size to know that's more the norm than them being healthy.
I agree 100%. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. You'll hear from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll talk some Saints. We'll get into the championship for the ladies, the LSU ladies. Also, we'll talk some football and some LSU baseball. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't move.
Conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. Sean, we didn't do this in the beginning of the show. Please tell everybody about, again, your award-winning blog, which should be an award-winning podcast, and all the programming over at Fox 8.
Yeah, thanks. We have every Tuesday night the Fox 8 Overtime Show at 10:35. We have the Final Bet every Thursday at 10:35, and the Final Play Show every Sunday night at 10:35. A couple things I'm working on. I have my blog. They have the Further Review blog on fox8live.com with the Final Play app. Update that. I'll have another mock draft hopefully next week. And then the big thing lately we've been pushing is this podcast, yes. The Fox 8 Overtime podcast. Vasilios Nicolaou, our producer, and myself, we do a few times a week, hopefully, but we have a new YouTube channel, the Fox 8 Overtime YouTube channel. So subscribe, like, share. We're really trying to get the ball rolling with that, just because that space has really become popular over the last year. Had a meeting with some of our bosses over at Fox 8 as I really want to get into that space. So we're really trying to push that. So if y'all are out there listening, watching, Fox 8 Overtime Podcast YouTube channel, subscribe, please.
Podcast's outstanding, guys. I'm telling you right now, it's an outstanding podcast. Now you got a chance to see it on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. All right, let's get into the Saints. I looked at it yesterday. $14 million over the cap is what Sports has right now.
Under or over?
I'm sorry, under. Did I say over?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Had me confused for a second there.
No, they're under.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think they're doing anything with veterans right now till after the draft, because I think they're trying to be able to hold on to those compensatory picks, which they didn't do last year. Okay. I would like to see them sign a veteran or two after the draft. Defensive end would probably have to be one. I like Frank Clark. Some other folks may like other ones, but I think you have to get a veteran defensive end. You may have to get a veteran defensive tackle that's out there, if possible. But I think that my opinion is the draft has to be a big man draft. The first, second, maybe even your third round picks have to be defensive tackle, offensive lineman, maybe defensive end. I think you've got to fill with your two guards being really on 1-year deals right now, and Pete, and really not knowing what they're going to do with gosh, I'm trying to think of his name.
Ruiz?
With Ruiz, he has a 5th-year option, which they haven't picked up yet. What's the future there? What's the situation with Penning with his injury? Ramchek's been often injured. Really, the only guy you can really count on right now is McCoy at the center position. I'm sure. So I'm thinking big man draft. You've gone through these mock drafts. You're looking at it maybe even closer than I am. What is your opinion?
Well, I think the Saints draft bigs just as a rule. They draft in the trenches. They do. Whether it's offensive line or defensive line.
It's a necessity this year, though.
It's a necessity. They believe in it, and it's a little weaker in some other areas in this class, in particular a wide receiver. You don't necessarily have the greatest need at that position this year going into the draft like you had a season ago. So, and I think where they sit, 29, 40, 71, I think you're going to be in a fortuitous spot, or fortunate spot there to look at the positions you mentioned. I actually, my mock draft that I had Brian Brissy, the D tackle out of Clemson.
Do you like him?
I do like him.
Okay.
I do like him.
He's been, let me stop you there, because he's been often injured.
He's been injured.
And
he had a tough year last year.
He
had a tough year last year with the tragic death of his sister. But I remember him coming out, high school, 5-star guy. When he's on, he's on. I felt like between he, Mozzie Smith, and Kalijah Cansey, I thought he was the most well-rounded. But any one of those three, I just named 3 names of 3 D tackles. I like all 3 of them. DA alluded to it at the NFL owners meetings when I spoke with him. They could use some help along the defensive line edge as well, not just D tackle. I had Isaiah Foskey, the Notre Dame defensive end / edge player. And I see a lot of people linking certain players to the Saints when it comes to defensive end / edge player. I'm just here to tell you, The Saints do not draft edge players below 6'4". They just don't do it. So if you see the guy from Iowa State or even the guy from Northwestern, they're the 6'2" and below, it's not going to happen, guys, unless they got really, really long arms. They want length at that position. So that's where I'm at with that. I had him going linebacker in the third. I'm sorry. Let me back up. I had them going running back in the third round with Tajay Spears.
A lot of people feel that.
So I think where you sit right now, you can make an impact, guys, at positions of need, guys that can get into the rotation and address a lot. You have a bigger class this year with 8 picks right now. It may not end with 8, it probably end up with 7 or 6. But nonetheless, you have an opportunity to add to that front offensive line depth, but also front 7 depth defensively.
Some players I like, Osiris Torrance, the guard out of Florida, former ULL guard. Cody Mock is a guy that can play every position. Now, he went to North Dakota State. He had a really good Senior Bowl. Okay, he had a really good Senior Bowl, but the thing that you like about him is the versatility. Okay, Mozzie Smith, you mentioned him. Ika, the former LSU player who went to Baylor. Okay, who is a guy that again is just a big physical guy in the middle, would be another guy that again that might be on their radar. You mentioned Tajay Spears. I agree with you 100% there. But I also like the kid Charbonnet out of.
I do like him too. It's a nice running back.
It really is.
It really is.
And I'll tell you what, DTR, the quarterback from
UCLA.
From UCLA. Robinson as a late pick, again, if he's there, he's a guy that can play the role of a Taysom Hill if you needed to, but also could maybe be a future quarterback. Those are just some guys that I've thrown out there. But I agree with you. Big man, running back. Or do they go veteran wide receiver? Okay, or are they drafting a wide receiver?
Well, there's a lot of smoke right now with the Hunter Renfrow situation at some point, given his connection to Derek Carr, and they really haven't had that style of receiver since Lance Moore. That small slot, detail route runner, probably plays a lot faster than he probably times, and a fantastic player, obviously, with the Raiders. So I could see that happening. It's a weak wide receiver draft. I didn't have them taking a wide receiver. I don't believe in my last mock, but maybe that could change. But this is not, and usually, the college game has been just producing tons of wide receivers. This is just one of those outlier years.
It's just the way it is right now.
And honestly, I'm not sure that it's a dire necessity. I would argue you could probably address the tight end position and maybe offset that as well. So I think a wide receiver is certainly a possibility, but I mean it's a big class, and you very rarely do they double up on one position in the draft. But I do think you can see them like Hunter Renfrow makes a lot of sense if they're able to make that deal done.
Let me ask you about a couple of players. First of all, Foster Moreau. Well, there was a report last week that he was going in for his physical with the Saints again. Do you think that means that they're going to sign him, put him on physically unable to perform, and then let him go through his chemotherapy, go through his again his battle with the Hodgkin's lymphoma, which again individuals can come back from, or do you think they're going to go in a different direction?
Well, that's a tough one. I know they're interested. I know that obviously they brought him in, took the physical, and I was told how it was discovered. It was on one of those routine things where just doing the examination, and they just found something. They felt something, and there it was. And they came back. He came back a couple weeks later to finish the actual physical / visit with the Saints. So there's clearly cut interest, and obviously he has a connection to New Orleans. He went to Jesuit High School, played for LSU. So yes, I think that's certainly an opportunity or a possibility. They could bring in a guy like Foster Moreau, but obviously he wouldn't be contributing this year. So I certainly think that's a possibility, and I don't know if it's better for him to be with an organization as he goes through this or not, just based off, I have no idea how it works with the legalities and medicals type situation. But yeah, I think that's something that could certainly they would address, and he's obviously got a connection with Derek Carr as well.
You and I talked about this yesterday on the radio show. Devin White asking to be traded from the Tampa Bay Bucks. You and I both agree if that would happen with the Saints, there would be a premium that would have to be paid to be able to be within the division. First of all, how realistic is it in your mind? You'd have Demario Davis in the twilight of his career. You're bringing in Devin White in the prime of his career. I don't. If I had to handicap it, I wouldn't put the odds too well on it because I don't think they want to trade him in the division. If they want to trade him, I thought the best thing would happen is play out your 5-year option. You're a free agent, then maybe come home. What are your thoughts? Is there a possibility? Is that a pipe dream?
I don't. I mean, I guess anything's possible, and obviously he's got connections to Louisiana, but we're just at square one, which is a trade request.
Right.
Has Tampa agreed to that trade request? That still has to happen.
Not that I know of.
Then you got to offer compensation.
Right.
Then you got to double the compensation because he's in the NFC South.
Right.
And you know the Saints already have a pretty good linebacker core. Now, fit-wise, yes, absolutely. They'd be the best linebacker core in maybe the entire NFL.
Right.
When you talk about DeMario, Devin White, and Pete Werner. But what do you have to give up? Can you make that deal happen? And is it even possible at this point? I don't. I would say more probable than not, he will not be with the Saints via trade.
Hendon Hooker.
All right, Hendon Hooker. I know a lot of people got excited over the visit. To me, felt like a medical recheck because he's a polarizing player because of the injury and the age.
Right.
I do think they like him. In fact, I know they like him. I don't think he's an option at 29. I think he becomes a more realistic option in the second round into the third round. And you got to understand how big of a part of the process this top 30 visit situation is. It's basically their last chance to get their own guys to look at a player like this, where is he at in his recovery, because he's made some significant strides in his recovery, but he's probably not going to play his rookie year, and he's already 25 years old, so you got to account for that. But you get the last piece of the puzzle in terms of medical information, renewed medical information from your own guys.
Right.
And then you assign him a proper grade. I don't think they would shy away from him, but I don't see it in the first round. I really don't.
Shift gears to Tulane first. They went through their spring. They brought in some kids from the transfer portal like last year. They had their best class in a long, long time in terms of recruiting. They got some returning players. They lose some pretty good players as well. They're expected to be the class of the American Athletic Conference. Do you see that?
Yeah, a whole new world, a whole new frontier for Tulane. When you talk about having one of your best seasons of all time, probably second to just '98, but holding on to some of the key pillars of that accomplishment. You talk about your head coach, you talk about your quarterback. In the days of NIL, you were able to hold off a starting quarterback returning, which other teams and other organizations, other universities were out to get him, and they were able to hold off. And now you enter into this world of now you're the class of the conference.
Right.
Now you're expected to do so. And you got some guys in. You welcome some transfers in that I think can certainly contribute as well. So I think if you're Tulane, it's a whole new world. It's a different kind of challenge. But my goodness, we've waited for so long for them to have this kind of challenge. So you have to embrace it. You have to go all in with it.
Right. Expectations are higher now.
You have to embrace it.
Right.
This whole 6-win thing is done.
No,
you're ready to win the conference.
Conference champions.
Yeah.
Right. You're looking to be able to repeat. Texas San Antonio might be a team to watch coming in this conference. I'll say it right now. LSU, your thoughts? Obviously, they've hit the transfer portal very well. Had another great recruiting class. They've lost some players, but they had players that are ready to be able to move up into those particular positions. How good can this team be?
Look, I'm confident in this team. I like the makeup. They were a little ahead of schedule. I think they're a little thin in some spots that we're probably not paying enough attention to. I'm a little concerned a little bit in the secondary. They got a lot of new faces up front, defensive line-wise. I like the offensive line, but they certainly brought in some reinforcements, and I love the development of Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier, and obviously they're going to have a lot of wide receivers. And running back, I'm still waiting for a dog to emerge, like a true LSU running back.
Could that be Trey Holly, the kid coming in?
It could. I know they love Josh Williams as well.
Right.
It could. So it's good vibes. Everybody understands what happened last year, but I just hope they don't roll into this picking up where they left off, because I still think there's a few holes. Or not holes, but a few concerns that I have going into this
quality
season.
depth is what you're concerned about?
Quality depth, and that's the transfer portal. You got to deal with that. You got young guys coming in, and I just think they played a little bit over their head last year. They were ahead of schedule. They won some games. Not saying they shouldn't have won. They earned it. They won it.
Agreed.
But I thought the last quarter of the season they leveled off a little bit. So you don't want to have false bravado or false confidence.
Yes.
I think it has to be earned organically, and I just wonder, just a smidge, if there's a little bit of assumption with this LSU team that maybe we need to pump the brakes on a little bit.
If you've identified some areas where you feel there needs to be quality depth, I'm sure Brian Kelly's looking at the same thing, and there is a second transfer portal after spring where maybe, again, he could fill some of those holes.
And I think it's going to happen. I think he alluded to that, talk about O-line depth, some front seven depth, maybe some secondary depth. I think he was pretty smart to say he's not going to find a star player in the second window, obviously, because they've already missed spring football and everything else. So, yes, I think Brian Kelly is going to address the needs. And then you have to, you don't just pick up where you left off. You have to, start over.
Right.
So I do think it's just a small concern. I still expect 10 wins and doing what they can do, because other schools are certainly dealing with their issues as well. But I think we're assuming a little bit with LSU that I just want to pump the brakes on a little bit.
No, I mean, again, they've got everything going for them. Again, we look at, and I'm talking across the board on sports. You're talking about a program that's considered one of the top in the nation. You're talking about the availability of NIL money. And you're talking about top coaches as well. So that's a trifecta for you. When you're out in that transfer portal and you're trying to get somebody to be able to commit to your program coming from another program, which is exactly what Kim Mulkey did, where she went in and got 9 players in the transfer portal using NIL money, and again, her pedigree as a championship coach, and of course LSU, again, and the history of women's basketball there, and turned, again, which was a team that won 9 games before she came here 2 years ago, into, again, a team that won a national championship in just 2 years. I don't think anybody's shocked, because I think this was expected. I think that how quickly it happened is shocking.
And I think even Kim alluded to it a few times, Coach Mulkey, that this would not have been possible without the transfer portal. You weren't going to win a national championship in year 2 doing it the old school way.
And NIL.
And NIL. Well, one and the same. When you get free agency now. You have free agency now.
Exactly.
You have free agency. You have NIL plus an immediate transfer. You have free agency. So they were able to get that. But still, you got to go through it. It's a long, tough road to win a national championship at any level collegiately. It caught all of us off guard because we assumed they were going to win. We assumed they were going to make a run in the NCAA tournament. We assumed they were going to get to the Final Four, but we all assumed that South Carolina would be waiting for them at the end.
Exactly.
And South Carolina would do to them what they did early in the season. Lo and behold, South Carolina never showed up. Iowa did, which was a much better matchup for the LSU women's basketball team, because I still believe it's South Carolina, LSU. I maybe still lean towards LSU. I mean, South Carolina.
Of course.
Pulling for LSU like nobody's business. But if you looked at Iowa's team, other than that center and obviously Caitlin Clark, I'm not sure that anybody else on that roster cracks LSU's rotation. And you saw the depth of that roster in the national championship game. I'll say this about Kim Mulkey. The best performance came on the biggest stage. The best performance came in the national championship game. That's not by accident. That is coaching. That is belief. That is getting your players to rise to the level that they need to rise to.
But wasn't it, again, she charted this. Everybody was criticizing her for her non-conference games in the beginning of the year, and she just took the criticism, but understood, I'm bringing in 9 new players from different teams. I'm going to play teams I know I can beat, but I need to get these players on the court so I can see what they can do together.
You want to know what a tough non-conference schedule does to a first-year coach? Tulane baseball right now. Look what they're dealing with. Look what they're dealing with right now.
There you go.
I mean, Mulkey's a genius. Look, and if you've ever been around her, she's got that it. Like, I don't know what it is, but she's just got it.
But she's won everywhere.
She's just got it. Like, she has just got it. I was at the parade. I talked to her at the welcome home party. That she just gets it, and she's Louisiana through and through. And you know, when the call came or the announcement came that she was hired, I mean, you just knew that that problem has been solved.
No doubt. All right, I want to get to LSU, but let me go through the standings and the records of our local teams in baseball. Tulane is 9-24. They're 3-3. They're 6th place in the AAC. They got 3 games against Wichita State at Turchin this weekend. UNO is 20-13, 5-4. 3rd place tie in the Southland. They got Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. They're going to Corpus Christi this weekend. SLU beat ULL last night to break a 6-game losing streak. They're 17-16, 3-6 in the Southland in 8th place. Nichols had a game against Southern canceled. They're 18-16, 5-4. They're third place tie with UNO the Southland. Incarnate Word comes in for, they're at Incarnate Word this weekend. Delgado, 32-7. They lost 2 to LSU Eunice. They're at Nunez this weekend. They dropped from 11th to 17th in the Junior College Athletic Association rankings. And then LSU 27-5, 7-4, number 1 in the nation. In second place, though, behind Arkansas in the West, they got 12th ranked Kentucky coming in. You got 2 minutes. Give me your synopsis on the Tigers.
Well, number 1 team in baseball. They've earned it. You talk about a tough schedule. I mean, the gauntlet that is the SEC. This is their, 4th or 5th ranked opponent within the conference that they're facing to start. They still haven't lost the series. They still haven't lost the series yet, although the South Carolina was getting a little murky. Then all of a sudden, the bats came alive and they were able to rally in that Friday morning game. Couldn't finish the series, obviously. So, look, this is an Omaha or bust team. This team has what it takes to make a run in Omaha. They've got the ace. And it's Jay Johnson. Everywhere Jay Johnson's been, the teams hit. They knock the you-know-what out of the ball. You have Dylan Cruz, you have Dugas, you have those players. You have an ace. Now, starting to get a little concerned or curious about day 2, day 3, weekend, day 2, day 3 pitchers, and who is going to emerge as the true closer. I still think there's a little bit of a figuring out process that's probably got to come. It has to be answered within the next couple of weeks here. That's the only thing I'm a little bit concerned with. And a lot of times that gets masked if you have a team that can score 11 runs in a game. Right. Which they do have. Yes. But sometimes you're going to have to lean on that. And if there is an Achilles heel, I think that's that.
But it is Omaha blessed.
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. Anything less than Omaha would be an utter disappointment.
I agree.
Utter disappointment.
I agree. All right, before we get out of here, one more time, pump the podcast, the YouTube page, let everybody know what's going on.
Yeah, the Fox 8 Overtime podcast. It is. We try to get those out 2-3 times a week. We'll have a little more normal schedule as we get closer and closer into football season. But Fox 8 Overtime YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, share the podcast. You do the audio version wherever you get your podcast. Download, rate, review, all that good stuff. The normal podcast works. So that's we're trying to get that thing going a little bit, and hopefully everyone out there can help us out with that.
At Sean Vazan on Twitter.
Sean Vazan, Fox 8 on Twitter.
Fox 8 on Twitter, and that's Sean Vazan on Facebook, right?
Instagram and Facebook, yes.
Instagram and Facebook. And, of course, I'm forwarding everything he does as well. There you go. Thanks for joining us, my friend, as always. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's so many ways to catch our program now. We are so blessed with, again, Pelican Sports Television, WLE, 1, 2, 3. I mean, there's so many ways to catch us. There's a QR code on your screen right now. Takes you right to WLAE-TV YouTube page or to my website. Set your DVR on your favorite time slot. You'll never miss our program. You catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays, 106.1 FM. Also, you can listen live at ericasher.com. Our digital platforms again are available for you as well. Also, you can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out at WLAE-TV's website as well. All right, let me get that out. I want to thank our underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of them. Please support our underwriters. We also want to thank again our folks here at WLAE-TV, who again with the production staff that put this show on each and every week. Jonathan Whitehead joined us today, our intern. Logan Graffia has done a great job for us as well. Also Alex Chacon has been with us for a while now, does a great job. And of course, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, and our director, William Hill. For Sean Vazan, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.